And you've been watching President Trump hold a Make America Great Again rally in Indianapolis. The president stumped for Senate candidate Mike Braun, who's trying to unseat incumbent Senator Joe Donnelly. Friday night's rally is President Trump's fourth rally in the final week before the midterms. He has another 7 rallies planned before Tuesday, including a stop in Fort Wayne, Indiana on Monday. Joining me now from Indianapolis is Kaitlyn Lang. She is a statehouse reporter for the Indianapolis Star. Kaitlyn, great to have you with us. The president.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. The president is still focusing heavily on immigration. Why spend so much time on that topic in Indiana instead of discussing the economy or health care?
Sure. I think the candidates are definitely discussing those other issues that you mentioned, but immigration is an issue that I think Trump's base gets really excited about, and it's still one of the top issues that Hoosiers care about. They're still really worried about immigrants taking their jobs. So there's still a lot of fear around the issue, especially around Trump's base. So it really resonates with the people who would attend these rallies.
And several polls released this week show incumbent Senator Joe Donnelly holding a slim lead over Mike Braun. What factors do you believe are contributing to that?
Sure. Every poll right now is showing that they're in a very tight race. There's not one that's really showing any one of them with a major landslide, but both of them have run very smooth campaigns. Donnelly is running in a red state that Trump won by 19 points. So obviously he knew he would have a challenging campaign to run. So it's not really surprising that they would be this close, but he has done well in trying to relate himself to Donald Trump. He's boasted about some of his policies that Trump has supported. For instance, he claims he has voted to fund Trump's border wall, and that's something he's saying in commercials. And recent commercials, he's called out the radical left, as he calls them. So he's really trying to make a play for these moderate voters and to prove that he is not with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. So really, Donnelly is in a good position for being a Democrat in a red state.
Right, so he's sort of positioning himself as an independent-minded Democrat, almost more of a independent, if you will.
Sure.
I'm just wondering how much of a factor President Trump is in this race, because as you pointed out, he is popular in the state. That's not always the case in some of the states that he's campaigning. So how is President Trump factoring in?
Yeah, he has already been here twice to campaign. This is his 3rd trip tonight, and he'll be here again on Monday, as he pointed out. 2 trips to Indiana in the last week. That's a pretty big deal and pretty solid proof that he still matters in Indiana. Like I mentioned, Donnelly is pointing him out in all the ads, and Braun, too, has tied himself to Trump. Even in the debates, he hasn't really been willing to say where he differs from Trump. He's sort of been Trump's yes man. And one interesting issue we've seen him do that with is tariffs, because that's something that's more contentious in Indiana. But for the most part, up until recently, he said he's trusted Trump. So I think both candidates see aligning themselves with Trump as the way to win.
So when it comes to the tariff issue, though, what do Indiana farmers think about it? Are they still, the ones that were for Trump, are they still holding strong and saying, let's just ride this out? Or are some beginning to lose faith?
I think some are beginning to lose faith, but a vast majority of them are still trusting that Trump will pull through for them. They're looking at what he's done with the agreement with Canada and Mexico, and they see that as a success. So they're still holding on hope, but you're definitely seeing these farmers start to drift a little bit. When you spoke to them in July, they were a lot more optimistic about these the trade disputes sort of evening themselves out. And even Braun, like I mentioned, he has sort of drawn a line and said that in the new year, he doesn't think that this should continue with China, that it's not going to work. So I think a lot of farmers are sort of going down that path where they trusted him up until this point, but they're ready for it to stop. It's clearly hurting them.
Right, and Braun has even put a timeline on it. That's interesting. Okay, so as you know, it wasn't just President Trump stumping for Braun. Vice President Mike Pence and Indiana University basketball coaching legend Bobby Knight also made appearances Friday night. Can all of this support help give Braun a last-minute bump in the polls?
It could. Bobby Knight is still fairly popular in Indiana, so that's definitely one that was interesting that we found out just today that he would be here. But what was interesting about Bobby Knight's speech is he didn't really endorse Braun. It was more of an endorsement for Trump, which was interesting because you have there was another Pacers basketball star that put his support behind Donnelly the other week when Joe Biden was here. So first of all, it's interesting seeing Indiana really going with their Hoosier stereotypes and depending on the endorsements of these basketball stars. But, you know, I think certainly having Trump and Bobby Knight stump for Braun is helpful. But, again, most of the people that Trump was speaking to would already be Braun supporters, would already be going out into the polls. But at this point, he's just trying to make sure that they all actually do get to the polls on Tuesday instead of sitting it out.
So, Kaitlyn, then, what are some of the issues you see as still playing a role for voters in Indiana in the remaining days until election? Or do you think at this point almost everyone has their mind made up?
I think most people probably have their mind made up. There's still some undecided, and there's still a decent portion that are planning to vote for the Libertarian candidate, Lucy Britton. So those voters, some of them might fall off and choose one of the other candidates. I think healthcare has been the major issue in Indiana for much of the race, and I think that will continue to play out. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in these last few days is just trying to get up voter excitement enough to get Hoosiers to the polls. For instance, I think Democrats really are focusing on getting their base in these last few days. That's why you have Obama coming to Gary, Indiana, a Democrat stronghold. They're really just trying to get out their voters more so than anything else. That's kind of where their focus seems to be at this point, more so than convincing people to vote for them.
Kaitlyn Lang from Indianapolis, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.